everybody, this is Perch. It's kind of crazy idea, crazy video, crazy concept. And coming from this question, the question being, hey, Perch, if I love a comic, if I love a character, what are the things I can do to make sure that this character, this comic, doesn't get canceled, doesn't get morphed into some weird other version of itself, doesn't give way to some new legacy version? How do I keep the character in the comic I love always the character and comic I love? The answer is you can't. If you don't own it, you can't. It's somebody else's, and if they want to change it, they're going to change it. And there's very little you can do about it if you don't own it. But I said very little, not nothing. And so, I mean, if we're going to explore this idea of how do you keep things the same, there are a couple things you can do which at least put the odds more in your favor. Again, anything that is not yours is always prone to alteration, change. But it doesn't mean you're completely helpless. It just means, you're going to place your bets into things, and you should place the best bets you can. First, the super obvious thing you can do is buy the comic, meaning actually spend money for it. It is amazing to me sometimes, particularly on the indie cycle or on the indie network, where you get people who talk about a comic that they absolutely love, so the best things, and its circulation numbers are like 5,000. It always blows my mind, and we saw this a little bit even with Marvel, which had higher numbers than that, but X Factor or The Wasp or Squirrel Girl or America Chavez, these comics had low numbers. And in particular with The Wasp, it was kind of baffling to watch more people. There's a tweet saying, this is the best comic ever, The Wasp. And it had more likes than copies shipped to, the Diamond reported. So, why aren't more people, if it is the best comic ever, if it's the thing that is great, and then later, like a couple weeks later, the comic gets canceled, and it's like people are angry about how could this have happened? I think it's a huge mistake for Marvel to do this. And I'm looking at this one tweet. It's a huge mistake for Marvel to cancel Wasp, and it had like more than 1,000 likes. You know what would have been helpful to keep the title from being canceled is if those 1,000 likes were 1,000 sales. But The Wasp was under 10,000. I'm trying to remember if it dropped under 5,000. It was low, I guess is my point. It was not selling well. And so if, step one, if you want something to continue, you're going to have to buy it. Downloading it, being there in spirit, downloading it off a torrent is not putting money in. It's not, nothing is happening. So, cash has to change hands. If cash changes hands, then better things happen. Absolutely, that is true, for sure. But that's not all. Here's an interesting thing that I want to toss out there, and I want to know if people notice this. So whenever there is any kind of hint that a character is exhibiting any kind of queer characteristics, even if it's just kind of a sidelong glance, or even if like the artist drew it in a way that and doesn't even fit what was being said, but it just kind of like things happened and whatever. People on social media, and not just social media, but on websites, on podcasts and other things, they will go hard, fast. It'll instantly activate it, saying, "This is canon now. It's canon." When Tim Drake, the first part of the 3-part story, when it was unclear what was going on, but it seemed like Tim Drake was going on a date with somebody, but they didn't call it a date. They're meeting up and everything else, but they were definitely hinting at what actually did take place. Immediately, it was canon. It's canon. Canon. He's one of ours now. Canon. And people wrote these articles or written blog why it's a brave move for Tim Drake to, and they really went aggressive into this. That winds up forcing the hands of companies sometimes to make these changes permanent, or make the changes even if they weren't planning on making the changes. You take the case of Iceman. You know what didn't exist, what wasn't out there, was a bunch of tweets or blog posts or videos talking about Bobby's relationship with Opal. Opal was the girl he was dating for quite a long time. They even had a whole storyline where she was the love of his life, and like he got into a blood feud with members of her family, or I mean, like it was there was a multi-part storyline dedicated to reinforcing Bobby's relationship with Opal, and it was there, many comics, not just one, but lots of them. It was canon that was a thing. But at no point was anybody like putting out the, hey, remember when Bobby and Opal were dating? Remember this relationship? Remember, like there was none of this. There were no blog posts, no news, no tweets, no nothing. Largely because this happened in the late '80s, early '90s. It was a long time ago. But regardless, there was no activity there around that relationship. And it has made it easier, certainly, for people to memory hole that whole relationship in those comics and basically pull out other panels from the last 40 odd years that of anything that meant like Bobby like looking up at the angel while he flew away. It's like, see, gay. He's looking at his butt. That was people were on top of that constantly. Now, I'm not saying that if you like a certain character, if you like, I don't know, let's say you like Daniel Ketch, Ghost Rider, and he had a relationship once at one point. I'm not saying that proactively you should go out there find the panels of him, being interested in women and start posting them because you don't want the character changed. Uh, but I will say that it is an interesting tactic that's being used right now, where if people want to steer characters in a certain direction, they aggressively throw out there any hint that supports their mind, and they do it's canon, it's proven, it's everything else, which basically it does help uh, push things there because the comic writers, comic editors, everything else, they're largely getting their information on the characters and their histories and everything else from Facebook and Twitter. And if you think that's crazy, as opposed to reading the comics themselves, you could check out some of the recent comments made by some of the writers currently in the X office who talk about different facts of Grant Morrison's run and other things that they got from Twitter as opposed to the actual comics. How do we know this? Because they're wrong, but we can trace back to the actual tweets where they got this information from, and basically ran with it, and then start writing stories around it, and basically the loudest voice won. And what was previous in the comics, kind of again forgotten. Very easy to memory hole, all that kind of stuff. So the suggestion I'm giving you here is if there's something you really love, if there's a character you love, a comic book you love, yes, buy it. But also get in there and make sure you're promoting it. Make sure you're promoting the things you like. Make sure you're telling others. Make sure that you're, while you're posting, various tweets to various things, make sure you're calling out the things you love. Make sure you're calling out the things you like about the book. The more you do that, the greater chance that you actually it will stick, or at least stay around longer. I think if you because that's what other people are doing. They're managing to steer certain characters. The challenge is if the story and the message goes out that a particular character is gay, and here's a handful of tweets to prove it. If you get a handful of people all making the same noise and saying the same thing, then very quickly what occurs is a comic company feels they have to go along with that, or else that same group will start calling them homophobic or denying what they have their headcanon basically. And so it becomes like, oh, we don't want any bad publicity, so we better go ahead and do this. That kind of stuff goes on. Believe it or not, actually, before Iceman was revealed to be gay, there was I'll say campaign, it sounds too formal, but there were a lot of posts and articles written, trying to make the case that he was in the 2 to 3 years that preceded the event. And there's little doubt in my mind that, Bendis had read that and saw it, and it was, that became an opportunity. I think that stuff goes on. The key there is not that this is some kind of secret network plot, but rather these are people being very vocal about what they want to see happen with the characters. So if you want things to remain the way you like, you're going to need to go to bat for that, and not fight for it, but push it. a little bit. You're going to have to make noise. Now, again, that may not change anything, but the question was, is there anything I can do? Yeah, there's a couple things you can do. Put your money where your mouth is, and put your mouth where your mouth is. Wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. You need to express more attachment to these things. If you do that, then you do raise the chance that you're basically raising awareness of the character as it is. That's going to help the overall recognition of what's going on, and it's going to make it a little harder for somebody to come in and tinker with it. Not impossible, but harder, because it's then you have to go against publicly stated sentiment. Doing it after the fact is hard. Once things have been changed, once something has been altered, it doesn't come back. It's a one-way street. I see some people every now and then say, turn Bobby back to straight. That's not going to happen. That's never going to happen. So, for what it's worth, be noisier about the things you like. One of the ways I think some of the comic customers are losing the comic culture war, if you will, is that people are very noisy about the things they don't like, but they spend very little time on the things they do. And I think spending more time on the things they do would actually do more to generate noise to keep some of those things as they are. If you're always on the things are screwed up path, then you're living on eroding ground. Basically, things are going to keep changing. You're going to keep being upset. You got to let more people know what you like, either with your wallet or with your mouth, your time. So anyway, something to consider. Again, at the end of the day, these aren't yours, and that's a tough thing to hear, especially if you've invested a lot of your own money over the years into into these things. You feel like you're invested because you have invested, but it's still not yours. And the power you have is your wallet and your time. So if you don't like it, in the great words of Kelly Sue DeConnick, don't buy it. Don't buying it is the most direct message you can send, especially for something that is not yours. The other one is put your time into things you love. If you put your time into things you love, you're supporting it in many ways, and that has a positive impact over time. Anyway, there you go. Let me know what you think below. If you have other suggestions, love to hear it. Like and subscribe, of course, and thanks for listening.